So I've seen a number of groups in different cities, specifically like in Chicago, where we're both from, that focus on civic kind of hack nights or like hackathons and build communities around that. In Chicago, there's this group called Shy Hack Night, and they work on different problems, and I think they put everything on GitHub. And I'm just curious, they're very much, I think, on the Web 2 side, and they're very much, let's say, on the Democrat side of things, of like the political conversation, and in terms of their political thinking and how they're developing solutions. I'm just curious, though. It seems like there's a really good opportunity with some of these organizations to build bridges and to get some of these templates explored and maybe actualized through the problem sets that are being derived from people in these active kind of hacker localized communities. I'm just curious if you've run into that or explored that before.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much good work happening out there, and I was just when I did the Stand with Crypto fly-in, they flew in a couple founders to speak with members of Congress, and I met this incredible guy from Lansing, Michigan, who had created this like Web3 enabled community maker space, identical to the vision that I just shared. It's like
Mm.
education, teaching kids how to code, getting them out of gangs, and like giving them economic opportunities and a free kitchen where they like dumpster dive and cook for people who are homeless. And I didn't know he existed until we were, in a cab going to the Capitol together and we're starting to talk about what we do. And so the whole idea of the consortium is anyone who's building these kinds of public goods, anyone who's creating technologies that are oriented towards directly empowering communities. If you see this episode, like please come become a member. There's we're not trying to get anything from you. We're trying to offer a space where we can actually find each other and learn from each other. It's like a space of real non-rivalrous colleagueship where like we want to learn from each other, and especially when you've already open sourced all of your code, like there's nothing to like conserve. We have some interesting ideas about how we can do IP sharing between peers in a kind of in that semi open source way. But those are all, bespoke agreements that like if you wanted to take a piece of technology and give it to someone who you really trust, that would be its own field of agreement. But I don't know all of the people who are doing epic things in the world. I try to
Well,
find all of
right,
them and bring
right.
them into a relationship with other people who are innovating.
Let me clarify, because I totally get that. That makes sense. I meant more specifically, so these are people that are not working in Web 3, right? But they are working in civics, and they have long-standing community and a lot of meetups that they've ran, a lot of events they've ran, a lot of groups that they've ran, and they've been able to work with local politicians at times. You know what I mean? And so it's like I almost feel like, if I'm going to think of like a visual metaphor, you're talking about being on one side of the bridge. You're on the Web 3 side already, and there are these people that are on like the civics that are plugging into institutions that are legacy and are still very Web 2. They're techie and they want to build solutions, but they're still very Web 2. They're on the side of the bridge, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the opportunities to like build that bridge. You know what I mean? So not just bringing in people, or connecting people that would already appreciate what you're talking about, but people for that would just be completely new for, that like even Web 3 would be new, but they are already bought into the idea that technology can be used to help solve civic problems. They just haven't been brought into the thought space that you're emphasizing yet. And I almost feel like there needs to be like a task force for those people, because there's so much work there being done that could be a force multiplier for the work you're doing.
I agree. And, there are certain design considerations where I do think Web3 has core attributes that are really important for the civic space. The the non-capturability, the permissionlessness nature, uh, the modularity, the fact that data interoperability is much easier on chain. Um, those are all design considerations that I think are really important for civic tech builders. And as you've said, people who are building really cool civic tech that are not in Web3. And Web3 has a bunch of design flaws that, especially around access, that make it really unappealing to invite, everyday people to suddenly start using this tool where they have to get a MetaMask. Like that's not going to be the interface that scales this technology to like actual grassroots organizations. And so I think we had that the work of building that bridge is going to go both ways. And I think the Web3 side has a long way to go to even meet that world where it's at, where, they're actually speaking different languages. They have like subtly different value systems. Um, I happen to believe that the value system of Web3 will eventually win out because there is a fundamental design principles that I mentioned that I think are essential. But I value the contributions of people who are building tech that's not on Web3. And in some ways, we have to work at that level right now. Um, and the design of the consortium, despite our Web3 focus and the fact that it is a DAO, um, it's designed to be such that you don't have to be Web3 native to participate. And the DAO portion is really like for more complex coordination between innovators. But just to be part of Open Civics, you don't have to be at all versed or even building in Web3.
Got it. That makes sense. Um, and I guess just to try to further ground a little bit, is there a specific use case that you think like best communicates how communities can leverage these technologies that you're promoting in a civic minded way? You know what I mean? Like just like the de facto like I don't know how you set up the scenario, whether it's like you have 1,000 people in a neighborhood and they want to accomplish X. I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts on what a really good exemplar is that's real world.
Yeah, I mean, I first go to community currencies because I think those are incredibly powerful. That would be slightly more than a neighborhood. But I'm really excited to see if we can work with the local farmers market here to start accepting a local community currency. They already accept food stamps, EBT. Would
Mhm.
your local farmers market accept a community currency? I also think that examples like Constitution DAO are really exciting because that was a group of people that did something in the real world that none of them knew each other, and they all coordinated to pool really large amount of funding together and take some form of collective action. And so, it could be as simple as you want to build a playground in your neighborhood, and each family on the block kicks in a couple $100, and then you have a day that you spend like building it together. Obviously there's like code and zoning, and like there's you start to get into a lot of intractable, like much more hard to unpack. But to get to a space where communities use DAOs to pool resources and do something together that they couldn't afford to do by themselves.
Maybe like gardens, like a food garden or
Yeah,
something might be
community
lighter
backyard
weight.
gardening.
It's a little
Yeah.
bit easier to get that without the red tape.
Yeah, I did created a template for backyard farming DAO, where
Oh, cool.
basically a group of families would pool resources together, build raised beds in each other's backyards, and then share the produce that they grow with each other. Um, yeah, little experiments like that. Eventually, I think that's more and more how the world will operate.